Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well and welcome to another complete dinosaur species guide. This video will feature one of the smallest stegosaurs ever discovered, the Chungkingosaurus, whose total length is estimated to be about 13 feet long or about the same length as the modern day rhino. As part of the Stegosauridae family, Chungkingosaurus is primarily a four-legged herbivorous dinosaur that is characterized by a double row of bony plates or spikes along its back, hind legs longer than its front legs, and a short neck containing a relatively small head. Not much is known about the small stegosaurid, as its first fossils are a relatively new find in the paleontological world, having been discovered in China in the year 1975. Dubbed China's Mr. Dinosaur, Dong Ziming is a prolific dinosaur paleontologist who has discovered more than 27 different species of dinosaurs, among them the Chungkingosaurus. The discovery of the Chungkingosaurus also happened to be a very lucky one at that. Ziming and his team were driving through the city of Dashanpu when the sound of construction work caught the lead paleontologist's attention. The team came across a site that was being demolished to make way for a natural gas field facility and a vehicle park. After spending a couple of minutes walking around, Ziming's team would come across numerous bone fragments spread throughout the site. However, these fossils were being damaged by the bulldozers in the area, and there would be little chance of stopping a state project worth millions of yuan for a couple of dinosaur fossils. Ziming and his team rallied local officials and regional media to put pressure on the government, but it would not be until 1985, 10 years later after Dong Ziming's discovery, that the government finally agreed to close the construction on the site. By then, Dong and his team had excavated over 100 dinosaurs from the area, with Chungkingosaurus being amongst one of them. This episode will feature a complete species profile on the Chongqing lizard and then feature an attempt at recreating its original environment in an enclosure. So for those who like to skip ahead, I added some timestamps for you to click. For everyone else, let's begin. Chungkingosaurus lived in the Dashanpu Formation in present-day China during the Middle-Late Jurassic period, about 161 to 155 million years ago, and was slightly more primitive than most stegosaurs of that era, being a direct descendant of the older Huayangosaurus species. Its name is derived from the word Chongqing, named after the nearby city in which the dinosaur was discovered. So the area where it was discovered is known as the Dashanpu Formation, but this actually covers 4 other formations, and of these 4, Chungkingosaurus is currently only known from the Upper Chaxiamiao Formation. It is known from just a couple of fossil fragments, but just enough to provide some idea of its appearance in life. This dinosaur reached 13 feet in length and had an estimated body mass of 2,000 to 6,000 pounds, and while it was one of the smallest stegosaurids, it was still a massive animal. For Chungkingosaurus, this high and narrow skull shape was an adaptation that increased the support of strong muscles that allowed it to eat rougher vegetation. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. While its teeth could grind up rougher vegetation, they were more suitable for use upon softer vegetation that did not require a lot of pull to remove from the main plants. To further help with this, Chungkingosaurus had a posture that saw its head held close to the ground, making it easier to feed upon the low vegetation of the Jurassic era. Due to its incompleteness, it is mostly theorized that the plates of Chungkingosaurus that run down the back and tail are arranged in plates rather than alternating pattern, as has been proposed for the most famous stegosaurs. These plates also have a very thickened middle section, making them look like modified spikes. While early depictions of stegosaurids saw these plates as being for either defense or thermoregulation, recent analysis have found the plates not to be suitable for either of these purposes. These plates are too weak to provide some sort of defense, and no thermoregulation link has been established. So it's been theorized that most likely Chungkingosaurus used its plates to identify with other members of its species, territorial displays, or simply for attracting a mate. However, aside from these plates, it had a final pair of long thin spikes at the end of the tail, which pointed horizontally to the sides and rear. Now this spiked tail, or thagomizer, was a part of Chungkingosaurus that was certainly for defense against predators. Whereas the thagomizer spikes of Stegosaurus were used against predators like Allosaurus, the thagomizer of Chungkingosaurus was used against similar predatory dinosaurs such as Cernoraptor and Changchuanosaurus. Additionally, most dinosaur researchers like Professor Paul Barrett have theorized that due to the rarity of Stegosaurus finds, most likely they didn't live in herds, but were probably solitary or lived in small groups. These types of dinosaurs weren't common, so if you were in a safari in the late Jurassic, they would have been a rare spot. The lifespan of Chungkingosaurus is also undetermined, but some Stegosaurus were known to live upwards of 80 years old. Finally, most Chungkingosaurus fossils recovered show that it went extinct around the late Jurassic period, as did most other stegosaurid species. Most accepted theories point to climate and environmental change playing a large role during the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods, with highly specialized predators in the newer ecosystems, competition by more advanced herbivores like ceratopsians and ankylosaurids, while also trying to adapt to a change in temperature. Most stegosaurs like Chungkingosaurus could not adjust and died off. As mentioned earlier, the first fossils of Chungkingosaurus were unearthed in Chongqing, China in 1977 by a trio of Chinese paleontologists named Dong Ziming, Zhu Shiwu, and Zhang Yigong. They unearthed numerous bones including a part of a skeleton, backplates, and tail vertebrae belonging to an unknown species. It would finally be named and described as Chungkingosaurus jiangbayensis by the same trio in 1983. This Chongqing lizard would be a reference to the city where Chungkingosaurus was first discovered, while the name jiangbayensis was a reference to the regional districts of Jiangbei where it was first discovered. As more fossils were discovered and described, the holotype for Chungkingosaurus was established, and it consisted of a partial skeleton containing part of the snout, jaws, dorsal and tail vertebrae, and a variety of other bones including thigh and pelvis bones. In that same year, in 1983, Dong Ziming described 3 additional species of Chungkingosaurus, but they were not named differently but simply identified as species 1, 2, and 3. It was also around this time that the species was classified and placed under the Stegosaurinae family. Species 1 was based on specimen CV0027, a piece of pelvis containing a sacrum. Species 2 was based on specimen CV00205, which was a partial skeleton, while species 3 was based on specimen CV0028, which included a series of a couple of vertebrae of a tail end and a piece of tegamite. Years later, in 1983, Chungkingosaurus would be re-examined by paleontologists Susanna Maidman and Wei Wunbiao, confirmed Chungkingosaurus is a valid genus as most other paleontologists did. However, some paleontologists like Gregory S. Paul would argue that due to its irregular finds, Chungkingosaurus remains might simply be a young or juvenile Tujangosaurus instead. Also, for a brief time in 2014, paleontologist Roman Delansky renamed species 1 as Chungkingosaurus giganticus and species 2 as Chungkingosaurus mangus. However, this would only last 2 years as paleo team Peter Malcolm Galton and Kenneth Carpenter later re-identified both species as Chungkingosaurus jiangbayensis. For now, the most referred mounted skeleton of Chungkingosaurus is located in the Chongqing Municipal Museum. It is displayed with 14 pairs of plates with 2 pairs of some rather short tail spikes. These tail spikes are only known from one discovered specimen. A third pair of spikes were reported but were lost in the excavation process, never to be seen again. Now, let's talk about the environment that Chungkingosaurus lived in to give us a better idea of how to replicate its natural habitat. The Taximiao Formation was an island basin during the Jurassic period. The warm and humid climate made for a perfect environment for plant life, and remains in the form of fossilized wood give evidence of a lush forest environment. Plants abounded in the Jurassic, but floras were different from what we see today. Although Jurassic dinosaurs are sometimes shown with palm trees, there were no palms or any other flowering plants. Instead, ferns, ginkgos, cycads, and seed plants flourished in Jurassic. Conifers were also present, including close relatives of living redwoods, pines, and cypresses. Furthermore, a 2001 investigation concluded that the paleovegetation in the region was dominated by woody plants with minimal herbaceous plant cover, supporting a floral shift from a forest landscape to a more open one. It also suggested that the climate was very similar to those of a humid subtropical temperate climate. Paleontologists suggest that the area most likely had a lake that was fed by a very large river. The suggestion has been supported by research into the sedimentary environment of the formation that shows that the formation had a shallow lake or river-like environment. That is further reinforced by the discovery of crocodile and turtle fossils in the area. So despite being a frequented dinosaur quarry at the moment, dinosaur remains would have been swept towards the lake over millions of years, thus accounting for the hundreds of specimens found. It has also been suggested that the large Stegosaurus lived in open plains, while the smaller stegosaurids, like Chungkingosaurus, used their narrower bodies to live in denser forested areas. Chungkingosaurus was also most likely a solitary dinosaur and must have frequented and had interactions with numerous other sauropods as well as theropods and stegosaurids, amongst many others. Chungkingosaurus lived alongside a wide variety of dinosaurs that produced mainly sauropods, but had also held numerous other dinosaur types. Large sauropod herds of Enclosures, which are known for having one of the longest necks of all sauropods, roamed the landscape. Almasaurus, which was a smaller relative of Enclosures, also roamed the area in herds. There were of course smaller sauropods in the Chungkingosaurus formation that included a 36-foot-long Chungkingosaurus and its similarly sized relative the Datosaurus. A wide variety of other Stegosauria live in the upper Chungkingosaurus formation that Chungkingosaurus shared its habitat with. These include the already mentioned Chungkingosaurus, who looked like Chungkingosaurus so much that early Chungkingosaurus fossils were mistaken as being young Chungkingosaurus. Other Stegosauria include the gigant Spinosaurus, a similar looking stegosaur that can be cloned in the game, and Chungkingosaurus, a genus of stegosaurs very similar to Kentrosaurus. Chungkingosaurus was most likely hunted and fed upon by Yankchinosaurus, a theropod dinosaur that was similar in size and appearance to its relative Allosaurus, and was the largest predator in the landscape. Other theropods include the Sinraptor, which was actually very similar to Yankchinosaurus, so much so that a skeleton of Sinraptor was formerly thought to be of Yankchinosaurus. Finally, we have the Leschensaurus, a mid-sized theropod whose rather elongated jaw might have helped it have a longer reach for biting over Stegosaurus plates and spines. However, this is only speculation. For now, these are some of the dinosaurs that are known to have shared their habitat with Chungkingosaurus. There are of course many other species, and it's only a matter of time before paleontologists discovered them. Unfortunately, being overshadowed by the more popular Stegosaurus, Chungkingosaurus has never been mentioned in Jurassic Park books or movies, and it really isn't the sort of dinosaur that your ordinary member of the public would recognize. The Chungkingosaurus is one of the few species in Jurassic World Evolution with no prior appearance in the franchise and was first revealed through its silhouette in a video released by IGN on May 7, 2018, detailing the first 20 minutes of the campaign mode. Unfortunately, this tiny Stegosaurus was overshadowed by the bigger and more popular Stegosaurus. Nevertheless, Stegosaurus would probably not have made it into the franchise if not for the thousands of letters that Spielberg received from fans, mostly kids, asking why he didn't include the Stegosaurus in the movie. Hey everyone, welcome back to the park. As you can see here, we've been slowly increasing its size, attraction by attraction. This time though, for Chungkingosaurus, as you can tell, it's a bit far away from the rest of the attractions. Reason being is that it's the only side of the entire map that has this nice mountainside, and we're going to use it as our base for the Chungkingosaurus habitat. Let's go ahead and build a lake, but let's build it within the basin, which is what some paleontologists believe was more or less a habitat that Chungkingosaurus lived in. Some parts of it at least. So we're just gonna go ahead and base ourselves on just that little tidbit, and let's go ahead and work with our nice mountainside that we have here. So first things first, let's go ahead and work with the terrain. Let's go ahead and lower it. We're gonna go ahead, of course, build that nice lake in the middle, but we want to go ahead and just make sure we don't go too deep. So let's go ahead and just build it here. You did notice I did that it's a nice like heart shape, if you can tell. We kind of want it really wide, that way there's areas that where the fence doesn't get messed up, and as well where your dinosaurs can traverse up on top. So there's areas where they can go, right here that looks like a nice lake area. So what you want to do here is you want to flatten the terrain as much as you can. And let's go ahead and put your water. You can go ahead and make it smaller. And like that. Now, what you can do here is you can leave it the size, you can make it bigger. Since it's a nice little circle, let's go ahead and just make it a little bit different. If we can, actually. I don't think we can, actually. That's the most that we can go. Because another thing we can do is we can flatten it. So let's actually do that. Let's flatten just one side that we want to make it, a bit bigger. So let's go over here, because we have a nice good amount of fencing over here. Let's just build it right. That's a good space. That's a good space. So let's do like that, and we go ahead and add the water. Expand it just a bit. Let's go a bit more. So let's go ahead and flatten this part right here. Perfect. And we're gonna add that little oblong. Oh, it doesn't fit. All right, well that's gonna be a nice walking ground for the dinosaurs, so that's fine. Another thing we can do here to make the habitat look just a bit better, just go ahead and smooth out the sides to prevent those wonky animations. You don't want it to have it too steep, and then the animations from the dinosaur are gonna look really weird. You don't want that. So, you know, just smooth it out just a bit. Make it bigger. Smooth it out just like that. Make sure your fencing doesn't get messed up. But once we're done with that, you can either, you know, try to expand or not. It's up to you. It's your habitat after all. But let's go ahead and do that. That's perfect. That's actually what I wanted. We just needed to increase this just a bit. That's perfect. Let's leave it like that. So after that, let's go ahead and work on our terrain, you know, our rocks, if you will. So let's go ahead and build 4 sets of rock. I do like one being here where these trees are already. Let's build 1, 2, 3. And, you know, you gotta make them smaller. Let's actually, you know, build a nice little path. These small rocks you hardly ever see, but, you know, you gotta use them. You gotta use them. Followed by one big rock. Let's do that. And let's have another one right here. And let's go ahead and use this one though, different colored rock. You know, just go ahead and let the magic flow. Just pretend you're Bob Ross. After that, you know, just do a couple here and there. I'm gonna connect these two. And after that, let's actually connect them, but just like a couple here like that. Okay, perfect. Once that's done, once you're satisfied with your rocks, you can go ahead and start working on our environment foliage, you can call it. So one thing we like to do is rock here on our water. It makes it look like there's a bit more depth to it. Makes it look darker. And then additionally on the sides, let's go ahead and, you know, work in some sand here. As we're dealing with a lake, a lot of sediment, a lot of clay stone. Let's actually make it spread just a little bit. And you know, this is a little bit like Bob Ross, so you kind of just want to like spread it throughout the habitat. After all, it's going to be replaced by the plants, but you kind of want to have spotches in here and there. Adds to the natural look of it. After that, you can work with a little bit of rock, mostly in these areas where the rocks are already there. So, you know, slightly. And since we are dealing with a basin, let's actually use more of our rock over here. So let's pretend this is the side of the mountain. It would be so cool if we could actually paint up there too. We can't though. Would have been awesome. But you know, gotta work with what we have. So let's go ahead and incorporate this rock and a little bit of the darker rock here as well. Accentuate some of the parts like here. Looks pretty nice. And let's go ahead and finish it off with some grass. After all, you know, the plants that we're gonna add here later on are gonna end up doing most of our work, but let's actually work with this type of grass here around the lake. Of course, there's just water. There's gonna be, you know, more grasses. But there wasn't no grass in the Jurassic. That's one thing that we need to make sure of, that we don't have any sort of grasses. But we can go ham with everything else. Mostly seed plants. A lot of seed plants during the Jurassic. It was one of the main plants. So let's go ahead and do a nice distribution of them here. And once we're done with that, let's go ahead and work on our forest. Since Chungkingosaurus, it said that the bigger Chungkingosaurus were more in the open, whereas Chungkingosaurus used to be in the forest area. So let's add a forest area here. Let's work with the redwoods. That way we can still see them. The other forest is just a bit too thick. Sometimes you lose the dinosaurs within it. So this is a nice, good forest area if you like. Throw in some Temskia, you know, to replace some of the redwoods. Give it a nice balance of various types of foliages. There's no grass as you can see here. So far so good. And let's just put some more redwoods back here. Oh wait, that was not the redwoods. These are the redwoods. And let's finish it off with some cycads right here. Can't go wrong with these guys around the lake. And let's actually work with some ginkgos. At this point, we can actually add some right here, maybe, I guess. Yeah. I also want to, still able to see this side of the mountain. So, just make sure it's still some rocky areas in there. Make sure you still have some rock in there as well. And then lastly, I think we have enough foliage, especially for Chungkingosaurus, but this part right here, there's always going to have some foliage. So let's go ahead and just finish it off with some either Temskia, or you can actually do some of the, because the Chungkingosaurus usually eats ground fruit, so we can add ground fruits with the cycad. So the only other thing that has seed plants, I think it also eats. But aside from that, I think you can go ahead and just work with the leafy climbers. I do like that nice piece of wood that's there in the leafy climbers. But aside from that, just make sure they're period specific. Just make sure to use the plants that I mentioned in the environment part of this episode. So here you go. This is a nice little basin for Chungkingosaurus. I'll go ahead and add the dinosaurs, and I'll let you guys judge, and you guys can let me know if you guys like it or not. So here it is, Chungkingosaurus habitat. Thanks for watching. Since Stegosaurus has now become the dinosaur that most people know of, it has been the go-to dinosaur in popular media, and as a result, aside from its appearance in Jurassic Park franchise through the game Jurassic World Evolution, there has been no mention of Chungkingosaurus in popular media. Being one of the most unique Stegosaurs, it is no doubt that Chungkingosaurus is a beautiful but deadly addition to your Jurassic Park. Thank you all for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.